Welcome to One Cool Thing. I'm John Burek. This is Matt Buzzy. We're here with a group of laptops on our table here today, and it's kind of a special day in that we've been waiting a long time to see these PCs, which are dubbed Copilot Plus PCs, powered by Qualcomm's Snapdragon X series of processors. And we got not one, not two, but 5 of these machines all in one place at one time. And we've been working with them for the last week or so, testing them, figuring out what works with them in terms of our benchmark tests. Matt's been working with the one in front here, which is from Microsoft, the Microsoft Surface laptop. We have a review of that up on PCMag.com, and we've started digging in with some of the others as well. So Matt, we have 5 machines here, a couple from HP, one from Lenovo, the Microsoft machine that we mentioned, and a model from Samsung that's bigger than the rest.
Yes.
What's extraordinary about these machines in terms of what's going on inside of them, and also what Copilot Plus is all about?
Yeah, so this is the first generation of so-called AI PCs from Microsoft, right? And what that really means, in addition to some software feature sets, is that the processors inside have an NPU, a neural processing unit, which crunches AI tasks locally. So any features like Copilot, asking it questions, asking it to change your settings, as well as any software that has AI features integrated, can make use of that NPU and drive this sort of AI generation of computers. Snapdragon, the Qualcomm Snapdragon chip, is the first one in all of these systems. Intel and AMD's next AI chips are coming a bit later. So right now, Qualcomm has a bit of an edge on the market in the first wave of these systems that are available.
Yeah, that's because Copilot Plus, which is this, I guess, subset of Windows features that are powered by AI and by the NPU. For a machine to qualify for Copilot Plus, it has to have a certain number of TOPS, which is a rating given by makers of NPUs to the number of trillions of operations per second that the NPU can process. And these machines are capable of above the sort of the minimum layer that Microsoft has set for the Copilot Plus systems. The existing AMD and Intel chips that have NPUs in them, the Intel Meteor Lake and the AMD Ryzen chips, the most recent generation, do not have adequate TOPS in their NPUs and thus aren't qualified as Copilot Plus PCs yet.
Right. Yeah, that was the first kind of dipping their toe in. These aren't the full-fledged systems that came late last year, just before a lot of the rest of the stuff was eventually shown off. So that was the first step, and we did get to test at least this system. We've tested all of them. This one got the full review treatment, the Surface laptop, so you can check out the full review of that now. We also have the Surface Pro, the classic 2-in-1 detachable tablet, which we're also testing. We just don't have that here on us. So we messed around with some of the features on this, as well as performance testing, which throws for a little bit of a loop. We have our usual suite of tests we run on all our Windows systems that measure productivity, media editing, all the things you might want to do with this sort of class of ultra-light and portable Procreator or professional systems. Some of the benchmark tests, because the Qualcomm Snapdragon chip is based on ARM, not x86 like the Intel and AMD processors that we're used to, compatibility is maybe not always where you think it is.
Right.
This time around, it's supposed to be better than it's ever been, which is probably true, as was the performance, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, there were still a few hiccups and things that we normally benchmark don't run on this system. But most of the things we did work, at least, even if they were slower, and we adapted and came up with a suite of tests that kind of showed off the capability of this new chip.
Right. Yeah, we actually have a whole suite of benchmarks that we typically use on x86-based systems, and we were able to use some of them. Some of them we had to get new versions of. There was a little bit of adaptability that we had to sort of bring into our benchmark suite. So as we review these systems, they're actually going to be tested with different tests than we might ordinarily use for Windows-based machines. Yeah. So that's going to be an evolving thing over the next year as these machines come to the market, and assuming that they stick, we're going to have to be able to use different testing to show the differences among Macs, x86 Windows machines, and ARM machines like these.
Yes, because even the TOPS, as you mentioned, that's one of the most common right now at this early stage go-to measures that is given for a system. It's like the manufacturer is going to tell you it does so-and-so TOPS, which is useful to a degree, but it's not an exact measurement of, all these handle these tasks differently. And we're going to see a lot of variation, and it's not you can't go gospel by what the TOPS is and say, this is the best performing system. So it's all going to require a little bit of finding out what in the real world these things are actually good at. And the raw, so to speak, AI core speed doesn't necessarily matter as much as how they perform on the real applications.
Yeah, one of the things with the NPU that has been pressed upon us by not only Qualcomm but Intel and AMD is that the NPU, this portion of the processor that's used for AI tasks, isn't necessarily all about like all-out drag racing
like
and doing
core H series chip testing. We just all the cores and threads get pushed to their maximum speed.
Right. That's not what this is
Yeah,
about.
it's not the same. Not the same situation.
Yeah, typically, like the NPU might be used for AI tests that are done in the background and that you want done in an efficient manner and in a power sipping manner as opposed to a power consuming manner. And that's the reason that you push something to the NPU. And if you try and measure that in terms of a drag race, it's just not the point of the thing.
Yeah.
So the TOPS wars, as I guess we've referred to them a few times in print, are sort of these number wars where Intel's saying they're going to have 120 total platform TOPS with their next generation chips, and we've got 50 TOPS on the NPU. For AMD, I believe that's the number. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's right. And then the 45 TOPS NPU on the Qualcomm systems here, which exceeds the 40 minimum for Copilot Plus, I believe.
Yep.
They're all numbers, but ultimately the way that these things are deployed and used is going to be very much dependent on the task at hand and how you're using the system. And it's not the straight up multi-core drag race like you were saying that
in the
we're
past,
used to, for CPUs.
Yeah. That said, we did test the system to the best we could with comparable benchmarks, and we also pulled out a bunch of other older existing Intel and AMD laptops to test against. So we make sure we were testing the same suite so we could compare the results of this new test, since our old ones weren't available, on equivalent Intel and AMD systems that exist now. And generally speaking, it was about as fast or faster than those. To Qualcomm's credit, because in the past, these ARM attempts at Windows, usually we've seen slower performance. They're not quite as up to snuff as the Intel and AMD stuff. This time around, they were at least as quick or faster on a lot of tests. That included, video encoding. We did do some raw speed tests anyway, just to see basic graphics performance tests. Nothing, too extensive on the graphics front. Especially these types of systems aren't really meant for that. But all in all, and keep in mind those are the existing Intel and AMD things with their next AI chips to come, so they're up against some tough competition later this year. But right now, for what's existing on the market, it does perform well. Like on Windows, this is the best Snapdragon, best ARM performance we've ever seen. We did run a couple AI focused tests. Procyon was one of them, and those do theoretically measure the total system sort of AI performance. But even that, again, it's hard to unbake the AI cores from the rest of the cake, right? It's like that it does perform well in an AI task, but you have to owe that to the laptop design, the RAM, like all the other factors that are making up a system. So it's not like, well, this has the fastest AI performance, full stop. That's a hard claim to make right now.
Yeah, with AI, you have things like, I think one of the tests for Procyon is photo identification and classification, if I'm not mistaken. And then we had another test, which was, I can't recall exactly what the model is, but from model to model, when I say AI model to AI model, you could have vastly different performance. Different things are being done and different things are being taxed. Some things are more reliant on the NPU versus this GPU. So that will be an evolving set of testing as this year and probably subsequent years go on.
Yeah, hopefully the actual benchmarks themselves catch up with the mark. Like that can include new benchmarks coming out that are made for not just what to do with the results of existing benchmarks, but hopefully some more direct tests of how these handle real world environments.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in meeting with Intel and Qualcomm in recent months, I mean, even they are working, towards figuring out like how do you illustrate this. So it's kind of an evolving thing that over the course of 24 and into 25, we're going to see AI benchmarking take very different forms than we're probably seeing in these very early days right now. Yeah.
Two more things I want to hit on quickly. One of them is battery life. That's part of the Qualcomm sort of selling point. And right now, as I said, all these systems are Snapdragon based, so they kind of have the advantage. So they're going to sell the idea these systems are mostly light, they perform well, check, and battery life. The Surface laptop lasted for 25-ish hours on our battery rundown test. So they definitely hit that all-day battery life mark. I will say the Core Ultra, I tested an Asus ZenBook Core Ultra 7 not that long ago, and that also lasted for 21 hours. So, it's not like in a new stratosphere compared to, but I think it looks like all of these AI chips are more efficient, generally speaking, than a lot of what we've seen recently. But yeah, as far as Qualcomm's main kind of three selling points, the mobility and the battery life, they definitely check the boxes. The other thing I wanted to say was the actual Copilot experience. I tested, there's a few things available right now, right? We know Recall, the big snapshot photo, memory, as it were, for your PC was in fact recalled. It's going to be in preview in the future for Windows Insiders. So it's not on the existing models as it is at launch, but they still had Copilot, the actual chat app, where you could ask questions, just like the browser version, but now it's,
But you can find like Windows machines now with a Copilot key, which aren't necessarily Copilot plus PCs, right?
Right. Yeah. So this has the localized app. It'll run the tasks locally off the NPU. There's also a couple other features built into Microsoft Paint. There's Co-Creator, which is I mean, it's kind of fun. There might be use cases if you have a blog or you need an image generated quickly and stuff like that, where you can type in a prompt and kind of sketch out what you want in Paint, as well as you can draw anything in Paint, and it'll, in a little render window, pull up a more, higher visual fidelity version of whatever you drew, which is kind of neat, and it does work, and it works pretty quickly.
Right.
So if you can't draw for anything and you just need a simple image to demonstrate, that exists as well. There's a couple other features, the stuff baked into Windows, the studio effects with the background blur, the eye tracking, and which the eye tracking did not work for me. Like, it's supposed to make it look like you're looking into the lens, and it wasn't really. It was kind of just messing with my eyelid as I flicked it on and off. It was odd. So maybe that'll get some work. But auto framing does work, which kind of drags you to the center of the frame if you move around a lot on your webcam, which is pretty useful. And all that is stuff that the NPU can handle, as John was saying, in the background without taking power away from the CPU, to keep running the actual software, keep all your tabs open, and not slow down your computer. So,
the Studio Effects stuff will work in multiple video calling clients, right? It doesn't have to just be Teams or something like that, right? It applies the webcam effects to whatever program you're using for video calling.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
So there's not that's kind of the other thing that was kind of the takeaway in my review of the Surface laptop, and I think we'll largely apply to this first wave of systems for now. The actual use cases for this stuff are a little thin on the ground. I mean, there's the stuff I mentioned built into Windows, and then from there you're kind of workflow dependent on do you use a lot of photo video editing software? Have those companies updated their software yet to have AI features built in? Because that's past the point where it's a Windows feature. That relies on the individual applications you're using. So some of them do already have that, and what's more, Qualcomm has worked on compatibility to make a lot of those run natively, and more of them will be coming. So there are benefits to having this now. I think our overall takeaways, you don't need to run out to get one unless you're an early adopter, but these do work. They work fast, and they last long.
So we have 5 machines here. Any quick takeaways from the ones we have here? This is the Surface Laptop 13, right? Yep. Biggest one here is the Galaxy Book 4 from Samsung.
I would say differentiate. If we're going to differentiate any of this, we fully reviewed, and this one is really the unique case. These are, they're nice systems. This one is an OLED screen. They're interchangeable purpose-wise to a degree.
Right.
But I do think that one has, you can speak more about why. That one is kind of one to single out.
Right, yeah, so the Snapdragon chips that are in the initial wave of machines, there's 4 chips. 3 of them are called Snapdragon Elite, and they have various boost and base clocks and vary slightly. And then there's what's called the Snapdragon X Plus, which is a 10-core chip. The Elites are all 12-core chips. The Samsung here is the only one that we're aware of right now that uses the top-end, fully sort of kitted out X Elite with the maximum boost clocks. So we haven't gotten this one fully benchmarked yet, but it'll be interesting to see how that compares to the other models. I believe it's there's a bunch of sub numbers that the X Elites go under, and I think they're classed as
like
84,
84,
84, 80, and 78. And we have a mix of, I believe, 78s, 80s, and the 184 here. So we're interested to see how the 84 class one does.
we have a good because this is the base model. This does come with that lower 10-core X Plus you mentioned. And then the version we reviewed was the near top X Elite, and then this now is one step above that, the top SKU of the X Elite. So that should be a good, 1-to-1. We can kind of see what does that jump up in. It's a larger laptop too, but I think that's what you expect that chip to be in. So that'll be a good jump up to see kind of what that performance jump looks like in practice.
There's a fair bit of granularity that's being hidden, with the naming scheme for these chips. So that's why reviews and looking at benchmarks of these things as they come to market is going to be increasingly important to sort of tell the fine differences among them apart from the features.
Which is a testing issue we've run into with GPUs in the past. You can have the same name GPU, but it might be configured at a different wattage and run vastly differently. So luckily we're well equipped for that to adapt already. That's something we're going to have to face going forward to keep a track on all those sorts of details. But I think that wraps up our experience with these machines so far.
Yes, we'll have more to come on this. More benchmarking, more GPU benchmarking, game benchmarking, and certainly you'll be seeing many more standalone reviews of these 5 systems and probably another half dozen or so in this first wave. So thanks for watching. Keep an eye out on PCMag.com for more reviews of Snapdragon X Elite as well as their competitors.